Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for stopping by. And today I am doing my week 2 of the Zoe study review. And we'll go into a little reminder on what all that is. I'll give a quick update of where things are. I'm closing in on 1 year post-op, not quite there yet. I'm going to be doing a special 1 year post-op video just to bring everything together, review the last year, tell you what my goals are for the next year, and how I'm going to be developing the next phase in my life. I've spent a lot of time thinking about what I'm going to do next. Some of that involves the study that I'm going to be talking about today. Some of it involves more activity at the gym, more life goals, kind of looking at it as my new year. It's been a year since the surgery, so we'll get more into that when I actually reach my anniversary coming up here this next week. But I look forward to sharing what I'm going to be doing over the next year, and also some of the videos I'm going to be putting together for you guys, especially people that are just getting started. I'm going to rewind a little bit for folks and really start diving into kind of the start through the end of the first year and how that goes into separate videos. So that's all coming up. So let's get into this. I'm going to make myself a little bit smaller here. And so here we got just a quick review. What is Zoe? So Zoe's a tech health company, and they have some research partners at Stanford Medicine, King's College UK, Massachusetts General Hospital, and Harvard Public Health. And they've all been partnering in these massive nutrition studies, the largest of their kind, called Predict. They've done Predict, they've done Predict 2, and now they're doing Predict 3. And there's tons of information that they've learned from this. This app and this program is based on what they've learned in these Predict studies and what they continue to learn about the microbiome. So that is what Zoe is. And so I chose to participate in a 14-day nutritional study. And I send in a stool sample so my microbiome can get mapped, a blood sample to measure my fat response. I wore a continuous glucose monitor for 2 weeks. You might have seen the old videos. And I tracked everything that I ate for those 2 weeks, photographed everything that I ate, and just logged everything as I went along. So that's what I was doing there. And so if we pick up where we left off, I gave you a little bit of preview on day 8, and I was like, what is that crazy spike? If you remember, there was this crazy spike, like right there. So on day 8, we started the primary experiment. So I'm going to back up. It was a 5-day experiment where I was only going to eat the next 4 days, only eat 2 ingredients for breakfast: eat a white bagel, 57 grams of cheddar cheese. Those are my only 2 options for breakfast. So on day 1, I just ate the white bagel. I had to fast prior to it. On all of these, before I had my breakfast, I fasted for 8 hours and then 3 hours after. And you can see, I'm going to see if I get my laser pointer working. There we go. You can see on day 1 with this white bagel, I went up to almost 170. My glucose went up to almost 170 here. And I think it was 167. And so that was just the bagel alone. And you'll see the rest of the things that I had throughout the day did not cause any spikes like that. And, I did other experiments and logged other food, but this was really the main experiment, and a lot of information's gathered from that of how my body responds to some of these things. So you can see what kind of spike I had there. On day 2 for breakfast, I just ate 57 grams of cheddar cheese. And as you would expect, not much of a spike there. There's no carbs. It's just protein, fat, some enzymes. that kind of thing. So there really wasn't any kind of spike. That would be expected, right? Not unusual. It's kind of why people do ketogenic diets or paleo diets, that kind of thing, is it levels out and drops down some of that blood glucose. So that was the second day. On the third day, I ate both the bagel and the cheese. I had essentially a cheese sandwich with the bagel, a little dry because there was nothing else on it. You can see that it actually had an effect of lowering the glucose response by about 10 points from one, or actually about 20 points, I should say, from 167 down to about 147. You can see that, I mean, 20 points, that's quite a ways, and it's almost down in sort of the range that you want to stay in after a meal, which is usually, between 90 and 140. And so just combining those two things, so combining fat and protein with carbohydrates suppresses some of that glycemic response, even with a pure white, just all carb bagel. Then on day 4, I ate just the white bagel again. But this time, after I had the bagel, I did exercise. And as you can see, it wasn't anything intense. I did a 30-minute brisk walk after I ate the white bagel. Now, it didn't drop it down as much as when I had the cheddar cheese with it, but you can see, dropped it down about 15 points. Going for a walk right after having the white bagel. So one of the points here is that exercise, obviously, it's going to get the most readily available energy that's coming out of it, and that is the bagel at that point. So it's grabbing some of that. It's minimizing the glycemic response. Just kind of exercise can help balance that response out. So some more intense exercise would have had a more intense effect on that. And then on the last day of the study, I ate the 57 grams of cheddar cheese first. I waited 10 minutes, and then I had the white bagel. And you can see this actually gave the most dramatic reduction. Like, this is down to about 140. Actually, I think it was 137. So a pretty major drop in blood glucose reaction there. And pretty substantial, I think. I think that's kind of interesting. So the timing of and the order in which you eat some things can really make a difference in your glycemic response. So having something with some fat, it doesn't have to be a ton, with some fat and protein before you eat something that is high carb will help minimize that glucose and thusly insulin response after that. So I think that's one of the lessons learned along here is food timing also matters. And we're going to talk about this pizza stuff here in a second. And we did a little pizza experiment, which was kind of interesting as well. So you can see there was the bagel and cheese experiment. I thought that was really actually quite cool. So let's talk about pizza. So we'll step back to day 11 here for a second, and we can see I had a cheese pizza, flour crust, which is basic cheese pizza. This was a frozen pizza, nothing fancy, not or anything. You can say it sent a pretty good spike up, right? Up to about 160. So send a pretty good, sharp, dramatic increase in glucose, and definitely would have triggered an insulin response with that. And so I was supposed to compare that with a cauliflower crust pizza. So I just purchased a cauliflower crust pizza, cheese pizza, same kind of deal, right? And I'm thinking, okay, well, that'll be interesting to see how much less that is. Well, guess what? I ate it same time of the day, around lunchtime, and it was worse. It was worse. And the lesson here, there's a couple lessons, but the lesson here is one, something says cauliflower crust, really read the ingredients, folks, because this thing had a ton of other crap in it. Then that definitely, without a doubt, was part of that massive spike. It was not mostly cauliflower. So it's really important. It had rice flour in it. It had some other flours, no wheat, but it had other flours in it. But yet it was sold as a cauliflower crust, and I didn't pay attention to it. I should have, because it would have been interesting to see what a more cauliflower-based crust might have done. I should have probably made my own on both of these, but um, that's the lesson. The other study here is I actually had the pizza twice, once at noon and once again for dinner after I fasted for 3 hours. And one of the learning points here is that carbs are actually processed better later in the day. You'll get a higher reaction from carbs if you have them for breakfast than if you do later in the day. So maybe avoiding carbs a little bit for breakfast, having them a little bit later in the day, and you won't get quite as much of a glycemic response. And then if you combine some of those other things, having a little fat before that or with it, those kind of things all have an effect on your response, which is pretty cool. And day 13, this is just something I wanted to do. Actually, my wife asked me to do this. So I call this my peanut butter and jelly experiment. And I had whole wheat bread, peanut butter with no sugar, and some cherry preserves. Obviously had sugars in it. And that set it up quite a bit to 150. So it was a pretty intense response when it comes to it, which is not too unexpected, but um, I wasn't really sure how much of that was the whole wheat and how much of that was the cherry preserves or not, but thought that was kind of interesting. And then you can see the next day I did the same peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but I used Ezekiel bread. And if you're not familiar with Ezekiel bread, it is a sprouted grain. It uses sprouted grain and lentil instead of flour, so it's considered flourless because it uses the sprouted grain. And I like it. It's very rustic and good. And you'll see that it was quite a bit lower. So that what that tells me is that pretty big response came from the whole wheat bread, which I think we think is somewhat lower glycemic, and not so much, at least not in me. So that was pretty interesting there, and that really wrapped up the 14 days. And I did other experiments while I was there, and while I was there, I did some other experiments throughout the 2 weeks. I did some chili and rice. I did spaghetti with different types of noodles and things like that. And it was all really pretty interesting to see how my body responded to stuff. I thought it was fascinating. And so, what's next? You might wonder. Well, first let's talk about what did I learn. I should know what my little slideshow says, shouldn't I? But anyway, what did I learn? I learned my blood sugar response is not that great, which is not unexpected since prior to surgery I was diabetic. I was diagnosed as with diabetes at the end of 2019. My A1C before surgery was 7.4, and that was on medications. And right now it's 5.0. And at the 1 year mark, as long as it's still in that range, I'll officially be in remission. So that's cool. But my response is still pretty dramatic. I get pretty fast spikes. So that tells me that it would not take me very much to trend back to that diabetic range if I was eating the wrong foods. Also learned that there's a real need for a fat, protein, carb balance. And I don't buy into any particular diet religion like keto or paleo, Mediterranean, all those diets work for someone. And if it works for you, awesome. Um, I'm mostly plant-based, or I am plant-based, but I do still eat eggs, fish, and dairy products. I generally do not eat meat, beef, pork, sausages, things of that nature, and um, just not interested in it anymore. I'm almost all veggie now, with some of those exceptions. And the quality of the food matters, and the types of food matters. It's really evident that what you eat and the quality is much more important than calories, in my opinion, and how your body processes it. And we'll be talking more about that as time goes on. But what it confirmed in my mind, as you can see, is that this battle with obesity that I'm still going to be in for the rest of my life, even though I'm in my normal fat range, is won or lost in the kitchen. Absent any crazy medical or genetic factor that could influence the outcome of the surgery, um, it's won or lost in the kitchen, period. What you eat matters. So what's next with Zoe? So we're going to be waiting for the results of my stool and blood samples. They're going to be sending me a big report, hopefully, very soon. I'm going to get a dietary inflammation profile, my sugar and fat response, my gut health, my microbiome diversity, and then I'll start a 4-week plan based on that microbiome diversity and the sugar and fat response that my body does. A customized plan that doesn't eliminate all foods at all. You can eat whatever you want, but it guides you to choose foods at the right time and a majority of the foods that do the most for your body, that minimize glucose responses, maximize gut health, and minimizes dietary inflammation. And it's those 3 things that are coming together in this plan, which I've read tons of research studies about, that just, it's important. I mean, it's just important. So that's where I am now. And my next video is going to be about the study results. When I get those, and I know you're going to find that fascinating, at least I hope they're really fascinating. I am really interested to see what is or isn't in my gut. And, my thought is, even though I've been trying to eat a very diverse diet, from what I've read, the way I was eating before surgery, I would be surprised and shocked if I had many good gut bacteria. I suspect that it will be dominated by things that are associated with inflammation and poor insulin response and all of that stuff. Even after surgery, and I've read some people think that there's a microbiome reset after surgery, and I've read that in a couple places, but I've also read some studies that said, no, not really the fact. In fact, there may be a short-term change after surgery, but they tend to revert back to the way they were by the year point, especially if you're not feeding it well. And so I think that's key. So that's what's coming up next. I hope you enjoyed this review of the Zoe study. The next one I'll dig into the app. I'll share the results of the study, and I'll show you how the app works. It's pretty darn cool because the app is actually customized to you. It's not just, averaged across everyone. It's actually customized to you based on your food responses. And I think that's going to be fascinating. So anyway, I've got 1-year surgiversary coming up, special video going to be coming out about that. I've got a ton of stuff I'm going to do. Yeah, sometimes it takes me a little longer than I want to, but those videos are going to keep coming. We're going to have some more educational videos for people thinking about the surgery. And I can't wait to share all of that with you guys. So until next time, take care.